Right. So we're going to continue talking about Lord of the Flies. I thought that we should discuss Lord of the Flies as a dystopia, one of the critical topics that we are supposed to discuss with this novel. And we are going to discuss the text of the novel, that is chapter 7 to 9, right? Um, these are some of the topics that we are supposed to cover. We are going to talk about representation of democracy, symbols and their meaning, and style. These are the topics that remain. Last week, we were talking about influence of Golding's life, which we will continue today. So we'll recap about what we talked about last week and discuss Lord of the Flies as a dystopia, and then discuss the events of the chapters 7, 8, and 9. Sarah, Ghulam Mustafa, and Habiba are supposed to present. Habiba has sent me her slides. I haven't received Sarah's or Ghulam Mustafa's. If you are supposed to send them to me, please do it now. Okay. So, what have we talked about in Lord of the Flies so far? We have talked about life and age of Golding. We said that that's fine, Madam Mustafa, no problem. Sarah, are you there? Are you in the class? Sarah is not here today. Let's see if she joins us by then. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. So we were talking about we have talked about life and age of Golding. He was a teacher who worked in the military in the World War. We saw that he was a public school teacher who used to teach in an all boys school. Um, he enrolled in science on insistence of his parents, but then he went on to literature. And we saw that he worked in the military during the World War, and which had a very big impact on him and his writings, especially on Lord of the Flies. We discussed the events of the novel. It's about a group of boys stranded on an island trying to make sense of the new system that they live in. They're trying to create rules, but they're breaking those rules. They're trying to survive on fruit and on hunting. They're hunting pigs on the island. So all of that is going on in the novel. In the last class, we discussed gender in the novel. What would happen if there were any females in the novel? You had a good discussion on that. There are no women characters in the novel, and I talked about how it could be an influence of his mother, who had a bad influence on him because she used to traumatize him as a child. It could be because he wasn't very close to any females. He until he got married, of course, but before that, he taught in a public school with boys only, so he was familiar with boys more. We also talked about influence of Golding's work, Golding's life on his work. We said about the influence of his mother. We talked about the influence of his teaching, and now we will talk about the influence of the war on him. Okay. He served in the Navy for 5 years during the Second World War and experienced firsthand the atrocities of war. um, War is a time when bloodshed and misery and death are at its peak, right? So to experience that firsthand, to be in that position where you see that on a daily basis, that could be very traumatizing for anyone. And that's what happened with Golding as well. These years left a big impression on his personality and his work. And according to McCarran, a biographer of Golding, it left a big impact on him and his work. Um, I'll let you read the next 2 points, please. Please go ahead, read the next 2 points, and let me know when you're done reading. Please go through the slide. Done reading? Okay. So since he had a first-hand experience of the misery and bloodshed, that made him believe that human nature was inherently evil. So if there were no rules, if there was no society like war, then all human beings would act the way that they were acting in the war. That's what his philosophy of life became, and that's what is present in the novel Lord of the Flies as well. So in this novel, we see that human nature, even in little boys, is evil, right? So that was the influence of the war. Golding himself said this about his experience of World War. I began to see what people were capable of doing. Anyone who moved through these years without understanding that man produces evil as a bee produces honey must have been blind or wrong in the head. That's the kind of impact he had of the World War on his understanding of human nature, on his life. Okay. So that's where we would finish the influence of Golding's life on his work. And then we'll come to chapter 7. I'll let Ghulam Mustafa start, and then we can move on to the analysis that I have written. Ghulam Mustafa, would you continue, please? Ghulam Mustafa, are you ready? You'll need to unmute your mic.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Am I clearly audible, ma'am?
Not very clear. There's a lot of disturbance.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes,
What about now?
that's better.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Actually, the chapter 8 is titled as The Gift of Darkness.
Are you doing
So,
chapter 8?
yes, ma'am. 7 was assigned to Sarah.
Okay, all right. Then could we wait a couple of minutes? Let me do chapter 7 and then we'll move on to chapter 8. Okay?
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you.
No problem.
Sorry, I thought you were doing chapter 7. All right. So what happens in chapter 7? I've written the analysis here. We witness a change in Rolf's character. We see that he is becoming different morally and psychologically. Like a, a lot of people, when they analyze Lord of the Flies, they think of Rolf as the good character and Jack as the bad character. It's not as simple as that. Rolf even changes. It is not just Jack who is evil. Rolf also experiences a lot of changes in his character, and Rolf is not all good. Simon maybe, Piggy maybe, but Rolf has a lot of flaws in his character. Um, we see on page 87 in chapter 7 that he hits the boars, he hits the big wild pigs, and he's very excited about it. He's happy that he's able to hit them. So from the boy who was all about civilization and democracy, and he wanted people to have rules and laws. He has changed to somebody who um, who gets excited and pleased about hurting another living being, right? Um, then there is this mock hunting play that they are having time and again in the novel, and we see that Robert gets hit during the mock hunting. Um, the, this is an indication of how the boys are leaving the impact of the civilized world. So now um, they're not the proper civilized public school boys from an English school. They are now turning into savages who are living alone on an island without any adults. So we see that they're moving away from the need of civilization as well. They're forgetting that they need to go back. The idea of rescue is erasing from their mind, and they're kind of enjoying the savagery, the pleasure that Ralph gets from the hitting the boars. That's also an indication of how they are enjoying their newfound freedom and the the removal of civilization. Simon is a Christ-like character. He's very philosophical. He's very pure, and he often needs to go into solitude and sit alone. And he volunteers to go alone for to inform Piggy and the little ones. So he's always in the need of being alone on his own. There's the fear of the beast, which continues as Jack, Rolf, and Roger see the wind blowing up the parachute. They see that the parachute is blowing up, and they feel like there's still somebody there, and there's beast there, and this fear of a dark beast continues throughout this chapter. All right, so that's what happens in chapter 7. These are the events of chapter 8, and I'll let Ghulam Mustafa explain them. Ghulam Mustafa, please continue. Usman has asked a question. The writer presents civilization as something moral that coerces children to behave morally as well. But when we dissect, we find this is a great chaos as this summit. World War II is the civilization isn't in the mockery of civilization. Yes, he is actually mocking civilization and democracy. He's not saying that our current form of government is okay. He's actually mocking the way that we are following the protocols of democracy and civilization. So that's a good analysis, Usman. He is in fact doing that. Ghulam Mustafa, I'll let you continue.
Thank you, madam. May I start, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Okay, madam. Actually, chapter 8 is title is the gift of darkness. So what does this title signifies that I will be telling in the end of my presentation. So before analysis of chapter 8, let's have a quick glimpse on its summary. So in this chapter, we see that the chapter reveals that the supposed existence of beast threatens everybody at the beach, and it increases tension between Jack and Rolf. This actually stimulates Jack's ambition to be a leader. So he calls an assembly and asks boys that they should re-elect their leader, as Rolf is not having qualities of good leader. But when the boys vote for Rolf to remain as a chief again, the Jake decides to leave the group and forms his own group. Here, actually, Simon suggests that they should face the unknown thing on the mountain, that is feast. But actually, everyone is afraid to go there, so no one dares. Then Piggy thinks that they should build the fire on the beach, so they do not have to go onto the mountain and face the horrible beast. So on other hand, Jake's small group kills a pig and leave the head on a stick as an offering to beast to plead that beast. Besides, Jake holds a party in order to attract more members. Every time we see Rolf tells Jake how important it is to be rescued, but Jake, who is actually stubborn, and that's why he consists to hunt, and he does not listen to Jack. So we see Simon in the end. We see Simon finds the Lord of Flies in the pig's head, and he stares hypnotized at the bloody head, which talks to him and tells about the real beast which exists within the man. So this reality, after knowing about the reality of the actual beast, the Simon gets scared. This is where the chapter ends, and this is what the summary of chapter is. Now, coming to the analysis of chapter. So actually chapter highlights different points that I'll be explaining ahead. First, we see that chapter shows the exploitation of fear. Here we see that both fear of beast and devotion towards God, like Jai means both the fear of beast and devotion towards God has been exploited by the Jake to gain power. Like Jake treats the beast like a god and offers head of sow to plead that god. This the fear of this so-called god increases the other boy's loyalty towards Jake, and in this way, Jake uses the fear of beast to gain power. Even in this conspiracy, makes boys unsure about which side they should be with, whether they should go with Ralph's side or they should choose Jake's side. So that's why we see that publicly the boys are unwilling to oppose the civilization that is leading that has been led by Rolf. But privately, they choose Jake, they choose beast, and they choose savagery. Next is the democracy turns into cult like totalitarianism. Actually, the democracy that Rolf leads devolves into a cult like totalitarianism where Jake acts as a tyrant while the beast is put forth as a revered god. This growing devotion of boys towards beast can be witnessed in their act when they impale the sow's head on stake as an offering to the beast. So the beast profoundly keeps a religious importance in the boys, we can say. In the beast keeps a religious importance in the boys' lives. So in this way, the Jake uses beast so cleverly to rule his savage kingdom. Actually, he knows reality, but he is just exploiting it to gain power. Next, we have savagery dominates civilization. We see that when boys completely mistake the dead parachuter as a monster or beast, not only that, but they also believe it as a god under Jake's conspiracy. So this actually diminished all the remaining power of civilization and culture on the island. And in this way, the rules and morals become weak and dispensable for the time being. So we can say that the savagery becomes dominant over civilization for time being. We also find a religious element in this chapter, like when Simon, like other religious mystics, fasts and meditates, and he comes in communication with Lord of Beasts, Lord of Flies, sorry. Some critics also believe that Simon's confrontation with Lord of Flies actually interprets the scene of Jesus when Jesus is confronted with Satan during his 40 days in wilderness. So we can also find a religious element in this chapter. In the end, we see that the beast within man, this is what is being shown by the Lord of Flies. So in the end of this chapter, the beast communicates with Simon and reveals itself as a savagery which exists within man. Here it means that it is not a real physical beast that inspires the hunter's behavior, but rather the barbaric instinct that lies deep within each of them is the beast. This is what the reality has been told to Simon by the Lord of Flies. So, by realizing the reality, the Simon starts fearing that perhaps this instinct lies embedded with himself as well. So the fear of this reality scares him, and as I said that I'll be interpreting the title in the end of my presentation. So actually, the sow's head that is presented as a gift to plead the god But in the end of this chapter, the show's head that is called later on called as Lord of Flies communicates with the Simon and reveals that he is the sign of savagery and evil that exists within the man, and spreads evil. That means the gift. The Lord of Flies says that it spreads evil and darkness. So this is what the title signifies, that gift that was presented to plead the god, the to plead the beast is actually the gift of darkness. So this is what I think about the title, although there could be different perspective.
What exactly is
This
the
is
title, Ghulam Mustafa?
actually, ma'am, the title is the gift of darkness.
Okay.
So here gift is simply the gift that is presented to the god to plead God,
Right.
means the head of soul.
Right.
But in the end, the head of soul itself reveals that it is the sign of evil, it is the sign of darkness, it is the sign of savagery. So we
Right.
can say that that was not gift that was presented to the god, but actually that was the gift of darkness.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Th-
Thank you very much. That was a very good analysis. I'll let you go through the slide. These are the events of the chapter. Halimat has written a very good point in the chat. You could go through it. These are the main events, as Ghulam Mustafa told us. They have started killing the animals now, and they are fighting over leadership. And Simon goes into the forest and he talks to the pig's head covered with flies, calling it Lord of the Flies. Okay, so we're not doing the discussion. I think we'll run out of time. So let's move on. So Jack has started a revolt and forms his own group. This mutiny shows that the boys have moved away from the need of society, as Ghulam Mustafa was telling us, and are not interested in being rescued. The killing of the nursing sow without mercy shows that the boys have become more savage than could be imagined. Losing a boar and attacking a vulnerable soul shows that Jack wants to rule by the rules of the jungle. So might is right, and evil has started to prevail. Lord of the Flies, which is the name used for the devil or Beelzebub, signifies the gradual change of the boys from civilized, clean, and well-dressed young boys to evil, dirty, and cruel human beings whose cruelty will now not stop at anything. The problem was not what was outside, but what was inside the boys. So Golding is telling us that there was no beast outside. The beast was inside the boys. The darkness, the evil inside the boys was the beast. So even though they were afraid of something being outside, but it wasn't really like that. So it's the same in wars as well. We are always thinking of the enemy being outside us, but it's actually our own evil, our own darkness that is causing that war. So I will share Habiba's slides. Habiba, are you ready to present?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Am I audible clearly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, sure. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm going to present chapter 9, that is A View to Death. This is a highly interesting chapter, no doubt, because there are a lot of events to look at. Sorry. This chapter contains a climax. Before going towards climax, we will also look at the discovery of the parachutist that was done by Simon. Ralph joined Jack's feast out of curiosity and hunger. Boys chanting and dancing, and Ralph and Piggy also joined them, which showed a little bit of their savagery. And Simon's death and fear of beasts that was not existing there. Next. So the discovery of parachutist. Simon, who is normally known as the explorer, like we readers can call him the explorer, uncovered the fact of the monster. The beast, which had haunted the children since the start, was nothing but a corpse of parachutist, and his parachute was entangled in the rocks that was flapping in the wind, and which boys misunderstood as the beast. Uh, Secondly, Ralph, who joined Jack's feast, was actually due to his curiosity and hunger. It is commonly said that to hungry, God appears only in the form of bread. So they thought to join Jack. Ralph, along with his group, did it, and they were quite surprised to see Jack, who was sitting on his throne just like kings do, and there was a lot of boys serving him just as his servants, whereas a pair of boys were assigned at the task of guarding the castle rock. So this was a kind of kingdom of savagery that was created by Jack. Then we saw boys chanting and dancing because there was a lot of good atmosphere, wind, we can say the rise of a storm, which led boys enjoying it, and they went frenzy. Piggy and Ralph were also part of it. And next slide. We also get to see Simon's death. Simon, who was the boys misunderstood, and they just saw a slowly emerging figure of a shadowy figure. They thought that it was beast, so they descended upon him, and they attacked him to death. Simon, this way, met his tragic end without even disclosing the secret of beast. He wanted to share the truth, but he couldn't. So it could be interpreted that the beast, which was non-existent actually, remained constant throughout the novel. This was not the beast that boys were looking here and there was actually inside them, and which led them to high savagery. Then was this is a question which I think arises, that was Simon's death a murder or a killing? So murder is something. Murder is a killing, kind of killing that is unlawful. So it is very much debatable that if Simon's death on that island was a murder or a killing. But this when boys answer to this question, different boys have this different perspective. In this novel, Ralph says that it was murder because it was his civility inside him which kept on make him feel guilty. So he said that it was murder, whereas Piggy never thought that it was murder. He always called it a killing. Then there was a fear of beast. It was actually the parachute which was previously untangled by Simon. When it slid off, the boys thought that it was beast, and they got haunted and they ran off. That's it. I think these are the main events of the novel, and the Simon's death was actually the climax. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Habiba. That was really nice. Okay, so here's my analysis of chapter 9. You could go through the slide. I'll let you go through it. Let me know when you're done reading. And the new point here is the third one. I think the first and the second point have been discussed in detail by Habiba. The third point is about the weather. I feel that the weather has been used symbolically in this chapter and throughout the novel. Nature and the setting of the island has been used symbolically. You see, in the beginning, it's very beautiful island. It's like paradise, right? And slowly and gradually it changes. They have made a mess everywhere, and the trees are burning due to the fire, and they have empty shells, and the boys start to go everywhere. So they kind of destroy the island. And in this chapter, it starts with windy weather, as if the storm is about to come. And this is symbolic of Simon's death that's about to come. And we'll see at the end of the novel that the whole island is burning as they look back. So this is an eco-critical perspective of looking at the novel. It's how these characters are connecting to nature. How are they behaving towards nature, and what's the attitude of nature towards them as well? So this is also something that you could think about and you could analyze. Habiba has written that weather was a kind of a foreshadow. It gave a message of something that was about to happen. It's a technique that writers normally use in fiction. That's true. Like Simon's death is a very significant event in the novel. If we see, the boys are dancing and chanting, and it looks like a tribal dance. When Simon comes, nobody listens to his faint voice because he's already weak from being in the forest for very long. He ends up in the middle of the circle, and in their frenzy, boys don't realize that what they're doing. I would like us to read the few. Let me just open it. Let's read from the highlighted part. Please go ahead. Let me know when you're done reading and I'll scroll down. Yes, exactly. That's pathetic Palestine. Are you done? Can I move to the next page? All right, go ahead. Read the highlighted part from this page as well. Devraj, do you want to speak? You've raised your hand. I think this part is written really well. Kill the beast, cut his throat, spill his blood, do him in. The sticks fell, and the mouth of the new circle crunched and screamed. The beast was on its knees in the center, its arms folded over its face. It was crying out against the abominable noise, something about a body on the hill. The beast struggled forward, broke the ring, and fell over the steep edge of the rock to the stand by the water. At once the crowd surged after it, poured down the rock, leaped on the big beast, screamed, struck, bit, tore. There were no words and no movements, but the tearing of teeth and claws. The barbarity with which these boys are killing Simon, thinking that he's the beast, imagining that he's the beast, is heart wrenching. It's very dark. They've killed him completely, and the clouds open and let down the rain like a waterfall. This is what happens. Okay, I want you to read this last paragraph as well, please. Habiba, could you put this in the chat to everyone, please? As if the boys deliberately not wanting to listen to him and go violent as much as they could satisfy their savagery. Exactly. Please read the last highlighted paragraph. Let me know when you're done reading. So Simon is dead and the boys have become completely savage. What do you guys think about this incident? What are your views after reading it? Kiran, what do you think about Simon's death? I feel like it's a very important event in this novel, and it's very impactful as well. The way that Golding has written it, if you read the original text and if you read his words, they leave an impact on you. That's how I feel, but I would like to know what you guys think. Simon is often considered as a Christ figure who came to tell the truth in the world, and people didn't want to listen to it, and both have tragic death according to Christianity. Yes, his death can be connected to the death of Christ. Jack and other boys were not using their mind. They think it's Beast who's coming, but it was Simon. Yes, that's true, Faiza. Sadaf, what are your views? Imran, could you please put it in the chat to everybody? It's like the good before putting a word of it diminishes in the world of savagery, as is done in our world. See, works as a savior now. Yes. Imran is saying no act is good or bad. It is the intention that makes the difference, to rephrase Kant. The intention of these boys was not to kill the human, rather they took him as the beast. But don't you think they saw him? They were killing him. They were looking at him. So even if their intention was to kill the beast, couldn't they see what they were doing? We're quick deciders. We don't know the thing from its core, just want to act without analyzing. Yeah. This is like the mob mentality that sometimes such incidents happen in real life as well. If you remember a few years back, something like that happened in our own country. The death of a young boy by the killings of a mob. So that mob frenzy that we have at that moment, you don't even realize what's going on, and you just keep doing what everybody else is doing. That's the kind of thing that was happening here as well. All right, so let's move on. Lord of the Flies is called a dystopia. A dystopia is the opposite of utopia. We all know what a utopia is. Do we know what is a utopia? Yes, that's true, Izhar. Utopia is an ideal world, right? Samra, could you please put it in the chat to everyone? Yeah, utopia is an imaginary world, an idealistic world where everything goes positively, right? And dystopia is the opposite of that. So dystopia is an imagined community or society that is undesirable or frightening, right? So something where everything would go badly or go wrong, okay? So since Lord of the Flies is, yes, that's right, Kanjan. It's a perfect society, and dystopia is the opposite. It's not perfect in any way, okay? So Lord of the Flies is a very grim, pessimistic novel which portrays how, in the absence of a democratic society, evil takes over everyone, even young boys, right? So that's the basic idea. That's why it's a dystopia. It's not pleasant, it's very undesirable, it's very frightening that young boys can behave this way. So it's dystopian in its very theme, right? So, Lord of the Flies is a dystopia from many perspectives. If you're asked to talk about Lord of the Flies as a dystopia, you could talk about Lord of the Flies as a dystopia in terms of its story. You could talk about it in terms of its characters, its philosophy, and its allegorical representation. Okay. So, dystopian story. Which elements of the story do you think are dystopian? Can you think of any? Quick responses in the chat, please. Salman, could you put it in the chat to everybody? Yes, that's right, Salman. Okay, so what elements of the story are dystopian? Representation of violence. Okay, yes, Resham. Killing of Simon. Exactly, yes. And any other elements of the story that we think are dystopian? Detaching from the bond of leadership, yes. So they don't follow Rolf anymore. They don't listen to his orders. They don't keep the fire going like Rolf has asked. Excitement on killing the pigs, yes. Please read Salma's points. She has made a good point there about Simon's death. Okay, so there are many elements in the story which are dystopian. Lord of the Flies is the story of preteen boys who get stranded on an island. In the absence of rules, they destroy the whole island, right? So burning fires, creating a mess, getting sick everywhere because they were eating too much fruit. By the time they leave, the whole island is burning. So that's one element that is completely dystopian. The kids who couldn't bring themselves to, yes, environmental destruction is a big part of the dystopian story, as Aisha has written. Shehrbano is saying disobeying rules is also one of the elements. Yes, that's exactly what happens. The kids who were not able to bring themselves to hit a spear later get excited to do so. They attack a nursing pig, cut off its head, put it on a spear, and eat its meat without any regret at all. So they change in a very unpleasant manner. So that's another dystopian element of the story. Early on, we saw in chapter 5, I think, that Roger couldn't directly hit Henry even when teasing him. He was hitting on sides. So there was this element of civilization in them. But in chapter 9, they get in such a frenzy that they kill Simon. So that's also another element that's very dystopian in this story. Moving on. Dystopian characters. How do you think the characters in Lord of the Flies are dystopian? Can characters be dystopian? The moments of frenzy are particularly dystopian. Yes, wild behavior towards each other in the characters. Kuratalan, could you put it in the chat to everyone, please? Very good point. I really enjoy it when all of you participate. So that's really good. Thank you. Yes, so which characters are dystopian? How are these characters dystopian? Negativity and jealousy in the characters. Yes, Atazaz. Extremely devilish characters. Jack, Robert, even Rolf, they're all dystopian. Janab says Jack is dystopian. Yes. Yes. So these characters are very dystopian in their nature because they behave in that way, right? So we see that there is this gradual development of the characters of Jack, Roger, and at times even Rolf and Piggy, which is far from an ideal situation. They become from teenage, preteens, public school boys. They become savages, right? Who start killing each other and who have no clothes on and they have camouflaged their faces. All those kinds of things they show that they are very dystopian characters. The way the boys behave and the people they become in the absence of rules is frightening and not ideal at all. In most island stories, we see that these characters grow in a very positive light, they follow the rules. But in this one, they follow no rules and they become completely savage, right? Dystopian philosophy. What do you think is the philosophy of Lord of the Flies? We have talked about it a lot of times. Um, what is uh, what is the main theme or main philosophy of holding presented in Lord of the Flies? What do we think? Manur, could you please put it in the chat to everyone? Yes, evil in human nature. Yes, Samra, Resham, that's right. That humans are intrinsically savage, tamed by coercive rule, thus it is dystopian way of seeing the people. Yes, Imran, that's right, thank you. Savagery more or less lies in every person, no matter how civilized. This is Manur's point that I'm putting in the chat. Thank you, Manur. Manur has done it herself. Characters represent different negative and positive aspects of humanity, such as Piggy. He is a dystopian character who stands for reason and intellect, and Jack, who stands for violence, cruelty, and totalitarianism. Yes. All right. So the descent of the boys into chaos and tyranny is allegorical, highlighting Golding's belief that human nature is inherently evil. So Golding is constantly telling us through the story that human nature is inherently evil. He keeps telling us that these boys don't follow the rules, nothing good happens. Slowly and gradually, they are degrading as characters, as people. They're degrading from their humanity itself. So they're becoming very barbarian, like Faiza has written. So they are very evil. So the Golding is trying to portray that human nature is inherently evil. We all have evil inside us, right? And that's a very dystopian way of looking at the world. Um, if you believe that there is no goodness and we are all evil inside, that's a very dystopian perspective, right? And that was the perspective of Golding. Bloom 2008 strongly criticized the unlikelihood of the circumstances where boys kill each other and claims that Lord of the Flies matter not in or for itself, but because of its popularity in an era that continues to find itself a useful admonition. So he's saying that even though Lord of the Flies is not relevant to us today, because not many people will agree with Golding's philosophy, hopefully, but it is a good reminder of what happened during the time of World War. It's a good reminder that people started thinking like this at that time in history. Okay, when everybody was miserable and there was so much bloodshed. So that is the time when this novel was true. Do you agree with Golding's philosophy? Is there what do you think, Halima? Is it realism or pessimism? What do we think about Golding's philosophy? Do we agree with it? Do we disagree with it? How do we see it? Do you believe human nature is inherently evil? Aska says no. Okay. Why not, Aska? What is your philosophy then? And how about others? Imran, Usman, Shervano, Manesh, what do you guys think? I think it's pessimism. To some extent, human nature is barbaric, but Golding leaves no good on the island. Okay. So you do think human nature is barbaric to some extent, Halima, but not to complete extent. Human is good by nature, but also has capacity to do bad. Okay, Aska has a very neutral view of human nature. Samra says that evil spreads like fire in jungle, like in the novel, the turning of good characters. Okay, so Samra, do you agree with Golding's philosophy that human nature is inherently evil? Kurutulan says human nature is not inherently evil because it is society or behavior of others that makes it so. Okay. Samra agrees to some extent with Golding. Atazar says human nature is not inherently evil, and then he has made an emoticon for a devil there for some reason. It's our society who makes us evil, but by birth we are good and innocent. Okay, all right. Athazaz was born innocent. Now he has become evil due to society. It depends on situation and environment. What is your situation and environment, Faiza? What do you think? And feel free to argue with each other as well. That would be really fun. Um, Habiba says it's quite realistic in terms of human nature, though the age must be increased. The boys at such age, I believe, can't do this much destruction. There must be teenagers. Then everything would be 100% believable. Okay. You have very little faith in teenagers, Habiba. The age is a very important element in the novel. Like usually children are believed to be innocent, and for Golding to show that even these young children could behave in this way, that was a very important part of Golding's philosophy as well. He's showing that we are inherently evil by their age as well, because he's telling us that even at this age they are behaving like this. So that was an important part. Yes, teenagers are very impulsive. Okay, moving on. Let's read Halimat's point and then we'll move on. Human nature is inherently evil, as we've always let me as we always have to struggle to do some good, but never suffer struggle when doing something bad in daily life. Really? That's the reason we are told to do good and we'll be sent to heaven. Okay, all right, Halima, that does make sense. Evil always attracts you, and it's easier to do bad things than to do good things. We have different perspectives to answer this question. If we see through religious perspective, so answer will be different. But if we see through scientific or philosophical way, answer will be different. Okay, Atazaz, what is your answer then? Faiza says if situation is good, human nature will be good as well. But if situation is bad, then humans will start responding to the bad situation. So nurture, you believe, plays a better part than nature, Faiza. You think that the context that we live in, the circumstances, help us understand, help us behave in a way different from our nature. So it's not really what's inside us, it's what we have around us. That's what Fight is saying, right? Salma is saying that there were island, no any perfect society was there to create evil in them, but it depends on us how we develop our environment. So this is a nature and nurture kind of debate that we are getting into, and you're all seemingly believing that it's more of nurture than nature. Okay, and Golding's point of view was a bit different from that, and he was saying that in absence of a civilized society, human nature will become inherently evil because that's what is inside us. Okay. All right. So dystopian representation. What do you think Lord of the Flies represents? The name, the title, what is it about? Are we clear on that? Do we know what it represents? The yeah, the cut head of a pig. Yes. What else? What does it? That's what it was in actuality. What does it symbolize? What does the head of the pig symbolize? Beast in human nature. Okay. What else? There could be a number of interpretations. As I said earlier, Lord of the Flies is the term used for Beelzebub or devil in the Bible as well. Okay, because flies are there on something bad, right? So the Lord of the Flies, he's the Lord of of the mess, something like that. Wild, brutal, barbaric life in the jungle, yes. The fear, the darkness in human nature, okay, that's also what Lord of the Flies represents. Okay, so Lord of the Flies shows democracy and dictatorship in characters of Jack and Rolf. The voting process is a mockery of the democratic systems. The boys who vote for Rolf do not know him at all, and the ones who vote for Jack do it out of fear. So it's a very dystopian representation of democracy itself. And Al-Saidi argues that the novel depicts Golding's pessimism after having experienced the war. Lord of the Flies presents both democracy and dictatorship in a dystopian manner. Okay, both of them, democracy as well as dictatorship, are presented in a dystopian manner. Lord of the Flies also represents the conflict between savagery and civilization, right? Once out of society, the boys forget the rules. The influence of civilization reduces and they become savages. They at first try to build a fire, they try to build shelters, and the rescue is the goal. However, as time passes, this group, they live in caves. They are more interested in hunting than in being rescued. So Golding is claiming that human beings are inherently savages, and if left on their own, they would choose savagery rather than civilization. So this is a very dystopian presentation of human nature as well. So he presents all these ideas in a dystopian manner. He presents democracy in a dystopian manner. He presents civilization in a dystopian manner. And he presents a very dystopian concept of human nature itself. So there are a lot of dystopian representations in the novel. Yes, Halima, that's right. You could say that. Izhar says that the beast in human nature, as like today's ghost inside humans, they only act like that, nothing else. Yeah. Children without parents can destroy their lives. It represents order, leadership. I can't understand what forcing my colleagues to say that we are evil by birth. We are innocent by birth. We always have elements of mercy in our heart. No one loves destruction, so we are not inherently evil. If we are so good at heart, why we need coercive rules to ourselves? This is one of the perspectives. Yes. There are two ways of looking at it. If we were so innocent, then there would be no misery and bloodshed in the world. But if we were so evil, then there would be no goodness in the world. So it's a kind of a mix, and obviously we could argue from both sides of the perspective. All right, so further reading, you could read more on this topic from the following sources: Al-Saidi and Bloom 2008. I have put Bloom on your group, have I? Have I put Bloom's book on your group? Evil has more attraction, yes. It's easier to do bad than to do good. Good takes effort. Like, I think Askar or Limat was saying it earlier. Right, so have I put Bloom's book on your group? Not yet? Okay. I'll do that, and I'll put this article as well. These are some things that you could read as reference material on Lord of the Flies. You could also go through these links about Golding's life and the blog that we shared in the last week's class, All Girls Lord of the Flies, could be a good idea. And there's this biography of William Golding. All right. So next week we will discuss chapter 10 and 11 of the novel, and we will talk about representation of democracy in Lord of the Flies. Does anyone want to present? If you want to present, that's okay. If you don't want to present, that's also fine. So if anybody wants to present, I could give one or two presentations. Halimat, I have shared research methodology slides in the Google Drive as well. How about others? Are you able to see those? There's a folder for fiction, and there's another folder for research methodology. Okay, so you should be able to see it. Any willing presenters for representation of democracy in the novel? Just one topic? Yes, Halima, please do take a look. It's there. For fiction, I'm not giving you any assignment, but for research methods, I will give a 10-mark assignment and I will tell you the instructions for that in the next class, okay, on Wednesday. For next week, you're all coming to university, right? So next week's fiction class will be on campus. So hopefully we will discuss democracy in the class, okay? All right, if you don't have any more questions, we will stop here.